Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited that you have come to share with me on this morning. I am Cece Jackson, and I want to welcome you to Cece Jackson's 2 Cents Worth. Welcome, everyone, this morning. Um, as you all know, that this is very interactive. So if you have any questions or you have any comments that you want to share with us, we want to hear it and we want to see it. So, CC Jackson's 2 Cents Worth is a platform where we can come together, where we can share, where we can learn, where we can grow together, and we can just spend time talking about the things that are important to us and things that are happening in our life. And ultimately, hopefully, by the time we end our discussion, we'll all be thinking about some way that we can change and make our world a better place. So that is the goal of CC Jackson's. Did I say my name wrong? Golly. CC Jackson's 2 Cents Worth. And so on today, I am like super duper uber excited to have my glasses twin with me. We are rocking the glasses today. I have with me Reverend Christopher Tweel, and I am so excited that he agreed to come and share with me on today. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about Reverend Tweel, and then I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself. Now, in light of everything that's happening in our world today, how people are just coming forward and they are dealing and addressing and coming out against the racism that became so in our face with the death of Mr. George Floyd, I felt like it was important for us to have a candid conversation about what it was that was happening. And I was scrolling through my Facebook and I saw this like militant man, Reverend Christopher Tweel, and he was letting everybody have it. He was like, we need to change this. It's not right. And I was like, oh, I think I love him. I gotta talk to him because it is past, it is beyond time for us to have this conversation about race in our society, whether it is race on our jobs, race in our churches, even the conversation of race in our homes. It is beyond time for this conversation. And for me as an African American woman, I knew this was something my ancestors had experienced. I knew this. I know my history. But to see it play out on the screen, to see, to actually watch a man die on screen was horrifying to me. And here I am, the counselor in me thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not going to watch this because I understand vicarious traumatization. So I said, I know that I'm going to be traumatized if I watch that. But inside, I knew that I had to watch it. And with tears running down my face, I actually watched someone transition in one of the most horrific ways ever at the merciless hands of someone else. And I became enraged. I, man, I really had to do all of my anger management skills. I was like, count to 10, don't throw your phone. I became enraged because it was just out there. But then I got an appreciation for it. And an appreciation in the sense that I don't have to keep saying what happened. See it for yourself. Take a look and see for yourself what we as African Americans, as Black people, have been trying to say is happening to us over and over and over again. And we're sick of it. We're sick of it, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that the joy out of that horrific moment is that it's opened the door to conversations with people like yourself that are outraged, that are livid. When I look at what's happening with people that are protesting, those who are peacefully protesting, it is not just my people out there. It's not just Black people out there. It's not. We have white people that are using their bodies in instances to shield black people. And it's never been like that. It's never been that we have been in a fight by ourselves, but it certainly has felt that way. Now we can see that it's not. And so this is one of the reasons why I appreciate you. I appreciate your willingness to share. I appreciate your anger and your indignation and you speaking. So this is why I invited Reverend Tweel, because we're in this thing together. It's not just me, it's not just you. We're actually in this thing together. So with that being said, Reverend Talia, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us if you cannot see, I think that you can see he's not African American. um he's not, even though we look kind of good with these glasses on. We're 20 now.
Style is style. You know.
It's a style thing. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you felt when you saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been a pastor for many years, and now serving at the church here in Richmond, and transitioned from serving a church within the city to serving a church out here in the county, and in Henrico, and that you know that was interesting in and of itself because you're moving from one space into another. You're moving from a change in narrative. You're moving from a place where maybe you feel it's easier to be connected, or maybe you would expect that it's easier to be connected to some of these urban city issues, and then the harder sell would be in the county, where traditionally in the Richmond metro area, that's where escape has happened. Um, but I have to say, just about that, it had been the opposite,
Wow.
where we might expect the city groups, the city folks to be more in tune, but it was kind of a flip. So that was kind of a neat thing for me, and I've spent a few years now within our presbytery. I'm a Presbyterian PCUSA, so we have a group. The collection of churches within this area is called a presbytery, and so within that larger church group, we created a collection of folks we named it the Dismantling Racism group, and intentionally naming it that because that was the purpose, that was the intent of the group, to dismantle racism, to have opportunities to create. We created some Bible study material, especially for our churches, all those kinds of things. So this work has been in me for a long, long time. The first church I served was in West Virginia,
Wow.
in Charleston, West Virginia, where our head pastor at that church went right to the biggest African American Baptist church in the city and said, "We're going to be friends, and I will do whatever it takes to be your friend, and I just want to sit with you and have coffee." And he just made that commitment, and the other pastor was very receptive to it, and they actually really built a strong friendship. And then out of that said, "How are our churches going to reflect our hearts in this?" And so
Wow.
they created this thing where we shared worship together. Every week we'd go back and forth for worship together, and just really built a strong relationship between these two churches. And this is something that this group Coming to the Table, which is here in Richmond, national organization, but that's something that they do too, which is where they're just trying to put people together. Like as kind of step one, to just say like, we need to talk, we need to eat, we need to
Hmm.
make mistakes with each other, we need to step on each other's toes, we need to have that space where we can hear each other and say that's hurtful, and be like, "Oh my gosh, why is that hurtful? Well, let me tell you why it's
Yeah.
hurtful," and to learn
Yeah.
something, to deepen, to build that into it. That's one of the biggest things that did. So
I like what you said about that, because sometimes we are offensive to each other and we don't realize that we're offensive to each other.
yeah,
It may be our cultural conversation and not recognize that it is offensive to someone. And if we're not at a table where we can have a candid conversation to say, no, that doesn't sound right, or
yeah,
that makes me feel uncomfortable,
yeah,
that we can't change. We can't change what we don't know.
And to not take
So,
offense at that too, I think is the second part of that. To be like,
mhm,
if I say something offensive and someone says that's offensive, that's not an open opportunity for me to be offended that they're offended. Like
right,
that's where
right.
it can sometimes break down. And so I think having groups like coming to the table and like our church is kind of intentionally coming together to step in between, like it's moderators between those two things. And so I came to it pretty honestly. My family on my father's side is actually Lebanese. And the first thing people say is, "Oh, you don't look Lebanese," which
What do
as
they think you look like?
just some white guy,
Average white dude.
right?
Okay,
Yeah,
I just want to put that out there.
right. Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, for years, for so many years, people would say that, and that was so hurtful to me, and I could never put my finger on why until I kind of got to college. I grew up in a small West Virginia town, and um, we had three black families in the whole town,
Oh
and
wow.
I was friends with two of them. One of them, gosh, Shayla Leftridge, God bless her. She and I were kind of buddies. We have a great story about having a gun pulled on us when we were in Huntington, West Virginia. So we were fast friends after that. But growing up, it wasn't until college, and I started to have a wider friend group of some brothers and sisters who were also not necessarily black presenting, who were on that lovely color spectrum. And just after months of being friends, some of this conversation came out, and somebody was able to say, "Well, oh, it's because you passed for white." And I was like,
Ah,
and I had like in college, I had never like kind of wrapped my head around like, well, what is that? And so when they explained to me something that she had dealt with, it was like, oh my gosh, yes, those are the feelings I'm having. It's this idea where like, because you don't look like the culture that I expect you to have, you can't possibly be that culture. And
wow.
it just eliminates everything that you feel like you are. Because for me, growing up in the Lebanese household and hearing Arabic spoken, eating the food, having cousins of varying kinds of shades, and older aunts and uncles, great aunts and great uncles who were very Arabic, and just some of that stuff that I know is kind of a cultural sharing that we have too. Like, what does that even mean? Like, can
Hmm.
you be very black or very Arabic or like what? How, why,
Yeah.
how have we gotten here? Why do we have to have these kinds of distinctions? So all of that has kind of informed my life as looking at racial matters. And my dad, as a kid, was called the N word, which, again, I don't feel like I have dispensation to say, even though he was called it. Like, I don't have dispensation to say that.
Yeah.
So that's
We would say in the church, walk slow, preacher.
right. Yes, absolutely, absolutely, right. Yeah,
Right.
uh, but that's part of the narrative,
Right.
part of the family narrative that I have, and so I have to
Yeah.
pull up
That's real.
pieces that I brought to the table.
So back to that question, how did you feel with all of that cultural background? That's who you are. It makes up the essence of who you are. How did you feel when you first saw the video of Mr. George Floyd?
That's me. That's me on the ground. I've bounced a check before. I've absolutely bounced a check. I've written the
Yeah.
wrong thing. I was one of those. I was one of those folks that there were a couple years ago that Harriet Tubman stamps came out, and for the $20 bills. I don't know if you've seen that. But so I've stamped a bunch of $20 bills and used them as currency. You stamp the $20 bill. You stamp with Harriet Tubman over that because they put the brakes on changing that currency in the government, and so it's kind of
So
like.
you just a rebel.
But imagine, because I say that because I've used that, and they've looked at me, they've looked at the bill, and one person called their supervisor over and said, "I don't know, is this funny money kind of thing?" That's exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about, and so I looked at that, And that's all I saw. I just saw that's me. That's me leaving my little girl behind, leaving my wife behind, leaving my family behind, leaving my whole community behind, leaving a vacuum of my spirit and presence. We and to watch the callousness of this lynching, of this absolute lynching that happened on the streets, on an open street in the middle of a city in broad daylight, with people surrounding that group of officers who are meant to protect us, who take a sworn oath to protect us, and watching them just just look at the crowd, just look at them, and hear them say, "Get off him, get off him. He can't breathe. He can't breathe. Take his pulse. Take his pulse. What are you doing?" All of these things, all of these opportunities that they had. I know you know this in counseling and in conflict resolution. We often say, if it's between a couple or between two people, like somebody has to wake up first.
Mm-hmm.
And in a conflictual conversation, you have many opportunities to wake up and say, okay, how can I use different words? How can I de-escalate the situation? And for them to have so many opportunities to wake up in that moment, so many opportunities, and for all four of them to stand there. And we've seen other videos, like you said, of exacerbating the problem, or continuing to show the problem. Even in the wake of all these protests, the problem hasn't gone away. The problem is an institutionalized function. And so we've seen, there was another video of another cop who took down a protester, put his knee on the protester's throat the same way, and another officer
Moved his knee
and pushed him off. So there's three other officers in that picture with George Floyd who had that same opportunity.
And none of them did it.
So, I was beyond words. I was beyond words, because that's me on the ground.
Now your cultural context helps you to appreciate the position that Mr. Floyd was in.
Yeah.
Just because of what you have experienced, when people find out that you are not, and for lack of a better way of putting it, pure white. But you have that past. You have that past because someone, walking up to you or just seeing you outside of the context of your family that you love would it, or even if they see you with your family, it's almost like you're out of place.
Who's this interloper? Yeah.
Right. Who's this? And so my question is, do you, and I mean, taking you out of the context of who you really are, but thinking about from your skin perspective, do you think from your skin perspective, if that was you that had stamped that Harriet Tubman on there and passed that bill, that out, and remember, not out of your heart context, your skin context, do you think that if that had happened, that they would have treated you that way?
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the thing, and this is how we know that there is an injustice in the world. Because I think all of us know, every color, know intrinsically on some later, if that were true, if a person who looks white had to have those same concerns after they wrote a check or did a bill or something like that, and if a white person walked out of that place and had four cops approach them, and they had to have a thought in their brain that said, "Uh-oh, I might die today," we wouldn't have that. That would not be true. We would never, white people, our structure would have never allowed that to be a thought that was present in every person's mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's only because it is a thought that is present only in one group of folks' minds, in a minority of folks' minds, that is possible. I think of a conversation that we had at a church on someone's rooftop. We had a lovely men's meeting, and it was an open space of being able to be, cautiously truthful with each other. And our African American friend said to some of our white friends, when I get pulled over by a police officer, I get scared. That is my first reaction, is to be scared, is to think of my family, and is to wonder if I'll make it out of this okay. And one of our white members said, was confused, was absolutely confused, didn't understand, had to have it reframed. Be like, well, what do you mean? Like, why? What do you like? Didn't have, and that's fine. It's fine not to have an understanding of that. It's fine if that's where your starting point is, and if you are looking to move ahead. And he was looking to understand it and to move ahead and to change his perspective. It was all good, but that is a way of seeing that. Yeah, if everybody had to have that thought when a police officer pulled them over, we would stop it.
We would stop it.
We would change the
It
police
wouldn't happen.
squad. We would change their training. We would not stand for it. All of those things. All of those things. It's only because it's not everyone that we know it's possible.
So let me ask you a question, because you put up some stuff on your Facebook page. I know people were using all of their color adjectives. Now, occasionally I use mine as well. I'm still a work in progress, but I find them to be very effective in communicating and articulating how I feel at times. But man, you went in. And I'm sure that you caught some backlash to what it was that you were saying, because you are standing for the righteousness that you know, the righteousness that you believe, the righteousness that you feel. And my husband always says something, that you believe what you believe. And so you are believing what you believe. And so with that being said, how did you handle the backlash that came from your passionate stand?
Yeah. Plant your feet.
You what?
Plant your feet.
Oh.
And love people. That was one of the things. I've just, my personality. I've always had this thing about, boy, that righteous fire. And as I mentioned, my first church in West Virginia, in Charleston, West Virginia, before, and I had that same righteous fire with our parents, with some of our students, and the head pastor and I would meet and talk, and I'd share that with him, and I'd be like, here is what's not right, and here is what should be, and here is, that's the line. And he'd say, and he was a guy that was in '66, in '67 was out at the protests, the rallies, was at Martin Luther King's feet. His whole life. He was older by the time we were together, but that was his background, so he had all that too. And he said, "Yes, you are absolutely correct. Now, how do you love that person
in spite of that?"
Right. And that was a great personal arc for me. And so yeah, when we get feedback, when we get pushback on some of these things, there is that line from Micah, the book of Micah, the good book of Micah.
The book of Micah.
And famously, we all know it, to love, to do justice, love mercy. And there's that other piece of it, to walk humbly.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that gets left out, or it doesn't get as much play, I think. And so I think even in our standing of our ground, in our saying of what is right and what is wrong, of what is just and what is unjust, our humility can still allow us to be informed by dissenting voices up to that point. And we can hear someone else say, well, I need to push back on that because of this. And our humility can allow us not to harm that person further. And our love can allow us to say, okay, I want to lovingly continue to hold you accountable and to keep bringing you into the kingdom of life. Because this is what it is. It's life and death. It's life.
It is. It is. It's life and death.
Racist actions are obviously life and death.
Life or death. And so we want to encourage everyone. I can see that people are watching. People are saying good morning to me, and greeting each other. Hello, everyone. We welcome you. We welcome you. We want you to interact with us. You can actually put comments, and we will show them on the screen. You can ask questions, and we can answer those questions. So we want it to be interactive. So please don't feel like you have to listen. If you think it's something, type it out and send it to us. We would love to. We would love to hear from you. We would love to interact. And Reverend Tweel, he's just putting it out there. Reverend Chris, he's putting it out there. He's putting himself out there, and he has caught some backlash. Today we're talking about we're in this together, and I thought it was very, very important to have someone on that didn't necessarily look like us, even though he came on here twinning with glasses like me, but that didn't necessarily look like us, but could understand and appreciate on many different levels what we as African American people are dealing with. And not only that, but being willing to be on the front line to say with righteous indignation, but yet humility, this is not right. And this has got to stop. And so now what we see that there's a response that listen, I gotta put this up for us right here. Can you see this?
Hey,
Thank you, Sherry. Uh, but there's a righteous indignation, and in 1966 or 67, when your pastor was going hard, he was not the norm, he was the exception, because him speaking out during that time could have very well gotten him killed and the parish burned to the ground. Because what you refer to this as is absolutely correct, a lynching. And these lynchings were taking place not only back in 1966, 67, but we saw it in 2020. And so for him to be that passionate about speaking out and sharing what was going on, that was the exception, not the rule back then. But what I'm seeing, and what I love and what I appreciate, is that it's not the exception anymore. It's becoming the rule, and it's becoming the norm. And I love and I'm grateful that you are taking the time this morning to talk to me, but there are also some others that think, feel, and are behaving the same way that you are. And I think the collective consciousness has been awakened by this unfortunate death, and because we saw it from beginning to end. So, whenever a video would go up of, just like when Philando Castillo, the young man that was shot in his car, people were like, oh, well, what happened before this? And what happened? There was always an excuse as to why African American people were treated this way. When we see with Mr. Ahmaud Aubrey, he was in a house. There's always something. We want to find a critical point of why an African American person was dehumanized the way they were. And so I am encouraged. I'm encouraged with the fact that now it's not just African Americans, but it's people that think, feel, behave, and look like you that are starting to say something. What do you think switched this time? What do you think switched?
I think I think it was that switch, honestly, of watching the whole thing kind of unfold, of just knowing what a minor infraction it was called upon, and it fills me with turmoil and disgust that is, if that is what it took, that is what it took. That we as a people, as a human society, are somehow so callous and so without empathy for other human beings, that we create this narrative in our heads that says, well, he shouldn't have been at a construction site ahead of time, and as if that somehow excuses two people getting in a truck with their shotguns and chasing down someone, and ending his life.
Right.
Like, that shouldn't even have ever been part of the conversation. And I think that's really what was the tipping point for some of my Facebook comments after this, because it's one thing to be angry with folks and to have to fight against them and to say, like, listen, being at a construction site shouldn't matter. Listen, having been picked up for weed when you were a teenager shouldn't matter. Listen, being in a hoodie should matter. Listen, you say all these things all along, and then finally to have this that says there are no other words to say. From beginning to end, there are no other words to say. I'm done having words. I'm done trying to convince you of why this is not okay. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
tell you over and over that it's not okay until something breaks with until the floodgate of our empathy opens up, until we see the life come out of him and our hearts can actually break.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question. Um, and they're almost the same. And this question is so, how do we keep the consciousness of America in a real state of change for improvement? But I think I want you to answer this one as well. Thank you, Lolitha. This is an amazing question. I want Reverend Tweel to answer that, but I want him to think about this one as well, from Dana. And Dana is asking something similar, in that she's saying, why do we struggle with understanding it in the context, and why do you think of this? So if we put those two questions together, the struggle of the consciousness and how do we move forward with change, what would be your response to that?
I think one of the first things is that we as humans are a tribal consciousness, and I think this is, or maybe not recognizing that fully, is one of the things that has kept a lot of pockets um, alive, a lot of pockets of racism alive, because within this tribe, I might have uh, two or three African American friends or friends of varying colors, and I can say, well, I'm friends with them, therefore I am not racist,
Mm-hmm.
therefore I do not have to think about this, therefore I have to create a different narrative in my head as to why these other things are okay. When I watch these lynchings on the news throughout the years, I can make this other narrative in my head that says I'm not a racist for feeling this way. I can believe what this group is saying about this particular thing. I can look at the monuments and imagine a different historical context for them. I can have this kind of narrative in my head because I have this tribe. But that is not, especially for Christians, that is not what we're called to do. And it's not what we're called to do as human beings either. There is, I'm gonna tease the sermon for not this Sunday but the following Sunday. Um, is going to involve um, a little bit of Star Trek, where we have Commander Data, who is an android. He has this word about being a being that continually attempts change and alteration and openness and knowledge. And that is what we lose when we are more tribal and we say, well, I'm not racist because. We lose that opportunity, that humility for Micah to say, okay, what about this could affect me? How can I look at this different? How can I change where I am now to alter something different? Because something's going on here, and I don't think I'm getting the full story, because there's another group over here that are really upset about this. So if I don't share their upsetness, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
How can I change that? So we get locked into our cultural experiences. That's a human thing. But thinking that it's okay to stay locked in our cultural experiences, whatever they are, is a thing that we can alter, is a thing that we can change, because we share space, because we share this city, because we share this planet, because we share all of this. how do we keep it in a real state of change? That made me think of the Lee Monument. If you've been able to go throughout the days or been able to see it, to see pictures of it on different days, um, it has changed. It has evolved.
It
The
has a new look.
there it has a new look, and it keeps changing every day as more is added to it. So I think the way we keep the conversation going is, number one, let it not be lost on any of us that even though, God bless him, Mayor Stoney had a lot of forums, a lot of discussion, a lot of places where we started the conversation about the monuments, where we brought new monuments into the space, the Daughters of the Confederation, adjacent land, and the land of the BMFA, where, and all that's good. But the thing that really changed whether or not those monuments stay was this great outcry and the fact that we made it uncomfortable for the people of that street to look at them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We made them as ugly to them as they were for us.
Oh, that's good. That's
Right?
good.
I
That's
mean,
good.
that's why it changed. That's why the governor has said we're going to take that out. Boom. I'm
So do you think that, oh, I love the way you couch that. That's just such an awesome perspective, because for us as African Americans, we had to drive by that ugliness
yeah.
and view it. So now that it is defaced with the reality of what it represented, it has now become offensive to those who have to see it. And so now it no longer appeases the sensibilities of their privilege.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things, if I could kind of like tag on to Dana a little bit, do you think that what is happening is challenging the privilege that people feel? I feel that it is a privilege to be an African American woman. I thank God for who I am every day, and I think it is a privilege. But the privilege in who I am is not to subject someone else who may be different than who I am. And I think that privilege in and of itself has been has been I don't even have a good word for it, but the privilege that some have experienced makes them feel as if they're greater than everyone else just because of the color of their skin,
Or because of where they live, or
where
because
they live.
what their family is, or because the endless litany of things that crowd in on our humanity and our humility. Jesus has this great joke. We don't always see it as a joke, but Jesus tells a lot of jokes in Scripture. One of them is about the camel in the eye of the needle,
Yeah.
and he's talking about the wealthy person, and that joke is not that a wealthy person can't enter the kingdom of heaven. It's talking about camels going through this gate that was very narrow, and camels have their eyes on the sides of their heads, and they freak out when they start going into that small space, and you have to literally drag them against their will, basically, to get them through. And so it's a joke, funny commentary that Jesus is having. Like, yeah, it's not impossible for the wealthy folks to get into the kingdom of heaven, but sometimes you got to drag them,
Mm-hmm.
and that is partially what that is dragging them out of their privilege and dragging them into this new space. And God bless them. I have friends, I have dear friends, people that I love that live on Monument Avenue, and not in apartments.
Mm-hmm.
We've changed what Monument Avenue is a little bit because some of those houses have been divided up by apartments. But they
Yeah.
live in a single family home, the 30-story single
Right.
family, and I dearly love them. However, I wonder if they feel like they have been doing enough
Mm-hmm.
as people of that street. I wonder what their thought is right now. Have I been doing enough as a person that owns one of the big historic houses on this street? Have I been doing enough to listen been doing enough to hear the real voice of pain that
Mm-hmm.
this avenue has caused. And I think now they can't ignore it. They
Can't
cannot
ignore
ignore
it.
it. Because you walk out your
That
front
was
door
I love
and you
that.
see
I
it.
love that analogy, camels, because I love camels. I had my first, no, it wasn't my first experience, but I actually got to ride a camel when Daddy and I, Mike and I, when Daddy and I went to, forget it, I'm not even going to try to fix it. When
Don't
we
try
went to
it.
Abu Dhabi and we were able to, we were on like a desert safari, so I got to feed the baby camels, and I got to ride a camel, and it made what you said made me think about how they cover the eyes and the mouth of the camel, because if I cover your eyes and I cover your mouth, then you're going to go where I lead you. And so the analogy that Jesus used in the scripture that you gave us was they could see how small that gate was. So because the camel could see how small that gate was, they were very apprehensive to go through the gate. And I think now, and unfortunately with Mr. Floyd, the gate has been blown up. There's no gate there anymore. There's no gate there anymore, and either you're going to go through it or you're going to stand on the other side. It's one or the other. You're going to go through it or you're just going to stand there and watch everyone else. And what I'm excited about is that people are making the decision that they no longer want to stand on the other side of it. Here's another this, and I'm trying to get to this good question that we had. Um, Stefan asked a question. Let's see, is it up? Yes. What was some of the struggles that you personally experienced trying to merge cultures together,
Meaning African American and white. Is that?
or any culture?
Oh,
But
I mean,
well, let me be fair. I
yeah,
think specifically he's asking that, but even and you and I talked about this earlier. There have been times where you have had to code switch. That's what we call it. We call it code switch, where the appearance is that you are white, but then when they find out that you have Lebanese in your background, then all of a sudden your voice is not as important as it was when they thought that you were white.
right. Yeah,
So what are some of the difficulties when you have to when you're not inclined to code switch, because all of us do it, all of us, I have a whole different tone when I'm getting ready to read you from from my educational level than I have when I'm just getting ready to read you because I'm sick of you. So and I will read, honey. I will read. So there's a difference. There's a difference with that. So how do you blend that, and how do you handle that?
yeah, yeah. And this is another moment, one of those moments where I'm aware of my skin privilege, honestly, because you know, a lot of us can speak in a certain way on the phone and get that interview, and there are people in my family who I'm sure were also checked off a list when they showed up in person, but that doesn't happen to me. If I don't get a job, it's just because I'm not good for the job.
Right, right. There's a
but
difference.
but that in and of itself is a privilege, which is insane to think and to say. Just if I don't find work, it's because of my merits or because of the timing or because of who I might happen to know. That is one thing that I don't have to deal with. So yeah, there is definite code switching, and a lot of times that has happened within if I'm talking about a racial justice matter, whether it's for African Americans or for Arab Americans or for anybody, um, that when I'm just a white guy who really got me, like, oh, hey, here's this white guy, here's this white dude, cisgender male, who really okay, like way to go. And then when it comes out that I have an Arab background, they're like, oh well, I mean, yeah, okay, whatever, yeah, it's fine. Um, it's either that or some of the other cultural pieces have been there are certain cultural uh, traditions around coffee and drinks and
Mm-hmm.
attitude and some of the things that we say that when I express those in a very white American culture, they're they're really put down, and it's kind of like that's super annoying. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, this was here's a good example. This was sent to me at one point. He said, that's super annoying. I was like, I'm sorry. It's kind of in me. It's in my DNA. It's who I am. It's an Arabic culture thing, and
Super annoying.
yeah,
It's super annoying.
I had another white person say, well, you're not in Arabia, or you're not in that culture right now. So their insistence was that I match white culture regardless of what my background was, even though I was being apologetic in that moment. So yeah, and that had a good outcome. I went and talked to that person later. I said, "Listen, what you said was really harmful for these reasons," and they apologized, and so that had a good outcome. But there are instances like that. But thank you.
All right, so you're walking me into this. I didn't want to do this yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. Oh,
So,
we're talking about these apologies.
mm,
Um, yeah, and these Karens and these Kyles, the Karens and the Kyles with the apologies. I I am not one that's big on apologies. And I'm gonna tell you why. I will hear what you're saying because I believe that it takes something cognitively for you to acknowledge something by apologizing. I will accept your apology. I don't have an issue with that. But what I do have an issue with, or what I'm wrestling with, I should say, what I'm wrestling with is the truthfulness of these apologies. Are these apologies taking place because now you have something to lose and you're being selfish and you want to hold on to everything? Or are these apologies taking place because you are actually in a space where you recognize that what you have done has been harmful to someone else?
yeah.
Because we have these people that are calling the police on black people when they're doing nothing.
On
We
bird
have.
watching, which is our most famous recent instance, yeah, like watching birds, you're breaking the law.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe don't break the law right now because dogs and the whole thing. Like your dog can attack these birds that are in this bird sanctuary. Just want to let you know. I'm calling the police and telling them you're threatening my life. Like, what's happening? What is even happening? Yeah, and her apology of that. I think when we get into these apologies, I think we cross into this space of the difference between shame and guilt. And with
Yeah.
your education background, you probably know this. This is a psychological tool that's been out there and talked about a lot. Um, I think that what some people feel when they're held accountable for these actions is their feelings start brushing up against shame, and that makes them feel like they personally are a bad person, and so they refute that. They bang back against that, and they say, "No, I refuse to be a bad person about this." And so they give an apology that doesn't feel great. What I think what I want, is guilt. I want you to feel guilty about your actions. I want you to see that your action in that moment was was poor, and I want you to know that it was poor and then know it was hurtful, and I want you to really respond to that.
Right.
Um,
To really sit with that.
yeah, not just because you got caught, or not just because you're like, well, I'm not a bad person, so I'm sorry, and just poof, be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of us are feeling as if we're hearing. And this is from all areas. This is from all areas. Okay. So we don't have a lot of time left. Oh my goodness, this was good. But you and I talked about the role of the church in all of this, and how the church needs to speak up, and how we have people that are in very influential positions that can really be catalysts for change, and they have gone mute. We don't hear anything. We're not hearing anything from them. And so this is two parts. One is um, the whole evangelical movement that's happening right now. I'm completely lost. I don't think anyone with the right mind fully understands that. I just don't. But what are your thoughts about that? That's the first question. And then the second part of that is, okay, so we see that 45 decided that he wanted to have a photo op. And so he now compromises the human rights of black and white people, everybody, and decides that he's going to weaponize military to tear gas everything and have these people removed, so for this photo op with the Bible that these evangelicals find comfortable. And I'm looking for the name. Let me see. What is her name? Bishop Marion Buttle.
Yeah.
Bishop Marion Buttle went hard. She was like, "You did not get permission to stand about it. You've never been in my church." I mean, I was with her comments, even though she was like calm, I was dramatic. I was like, "Get him, Bishop!" Yes. And now they have put up 2 feet of fencing around her church. So we have these evangelicals that were saying, we need to go to church. We need to be in church. Let COVID kill everybody. And now we have 2 feet of fencing that she and her parishioners cannot even get to, that's blocking her from worship. So what do you think about the silence? And what do you think about the hypocrisy that we're seeing now?
Yeah. The silence is really, the more days go by, the more deafening it gets. And for our big, what are called big steeple, or our downtown churches, or our, if your building was created, or if your church was around pre-Civil War and your building was made after the Civil War, or if your church was resupplied after the Civil War, a lot of churches, especially in Richmond, have this narrative that after the Civil War, one or two of the pastors went around to the South to collect funds to rebuild the churches. And that sounds like a great narrative until you realize that all of the funds that they were collecting were from people immediately after the Civil War. Where did those funds come from? Those funds came from human death and suffering on a scale to which the world has never seen. And that is the money that built your church. So when we look now at present day, at 2020, and we have churches that have $2, $3, $4, $5 million in their endowment funds, where did that money come from?
Watch that tone, preacher. I heard it
Where
change.
did that money come from? And if you as a church can't even come to the street, if you can't even come to the street and say, hey, that's part of our history, we acknowledge that, we claim it, we can't go back in time, but here's what we're going to do. Here is how we are going to live out this gospel imperative of anti-racism. Here's how we are going to use those funds for continued good, and not just think about how we can protect our building, and think about how we can protect ourselves, and think about how we can keep ourselves safe, and then maybe do an outreach program evangelizing some different people of color to come and be members of the church.
We do that program. We got to do that program now. We put money in the budget for the program.
And programs aren't bad.
Right.
You have got to have both.
You got to have both.
You can't be a church. You cannot. I'm fully on board with this. You cannot be a church in the South. You cannot be a first or a second or a third, Baptist, Episcopal, whatever the denomination is. You can't be that church in the South and not understand that that's where your money came from. That is what built your mortar. That is what put your bricks together. And if you were built in the 20s, same rule applies, because that's the era of Jim Crow and who were the business owners that had the money and the wealth at that point because of it. A completely not just unfair, but intentionally unfair
Oppressive.
system. That
Mm-hmm.
is what is in your mortar. That is what is in your bricks. That is what is in your windows. And a lot of churches are proud of the way their church looks. But all I see is blood.
But the
That's
the
not my quote.
and you see blood, and I hear the voice. I feel the presence of my ancestors, uh, that paid the price for where we are, and I think that that's one of the things that we see. But and along the lines of the spirit of my ancestors, I am so excited to see so many of the young people who are out there, that are out there protesting, that are saying, nope, we're not having it. And, I actually had a conversation with someone where, I felt really bad. And I said, I think that we stopped telling the story of what happened and how it happened, and these lynchings that took place not so long ago. But being able to see history repeat itself with Mr. Floyd, I think incited something. And so, whereas someone said to me once, I don't need another history lesson, you're right, you don't. Because what I can simply do is parallel what you see in 2020 with Mr. George Floyd to what happened in the 60s, even the 70s, to our ancestors. So I'm glad to see the spirit of our ancestors that are rising up, and they are out there that are protesting, not looting. There is a difference. There are opportunists in every movement. No matter what it is, there are opportunists, people that will take advantage of it. I understand the human inclination to want to tear something down physically. Um, I get it, because that is a human response. That is a human response to combat something that we think is offensive. So I get that, but I love 110% more the way that we have seriously, how we have embraced that we're in this thing together. Um, what we're doing now is going to affect for years to come our children, our children's children, and we are impacting and changing the world right now. And so, what I want to say is, thank you, Reverend Tweel, for being a voice, one of the voices crying out in the wilderness, crying out that some things have got to change. And I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate. Just your insight and your willingness to share with us today. So, on behalf of myself and the crew at CC's Two Cents Worth, we say thank you, Reverend Tweel, for putting yourself out here and being willing to have this conversation with us. So, this is, so yeah, let me just put that up there. Can we see that? Am I, can we see that? Oh, yes! I just wanted to put that up there. So again, I want to thank everyone for being a part of the conversation with us on today. Reverend CC's 2 cents worth um, is every Friday at 10 a.m. And part of what we are doing this for, and the reason why I am a part of this, is for what we call the Living Love Foundation. The Living Love Foundation has three main goals: to educate, empower, and excite. It is to educate our own, both professionally and academically, to empower others, to reach everyone, and to excite everyone about their great potential. So look for more information about the Living Love Foundation, where we are educating everyone, especially our own, empowering people to reach beyond anything they could have ever imagined, and exciting people about changing the world. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this one segment at a time. So, Reverend Tweel, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm humbled and glad to have been on the show. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
All right. And so next time, y'all spread the word. Y'all put this on replay. Send it to everybody that you know. Tell them they have to catch this episode. We are not through with this conversation. I know already I'm going to have to bring him back because there are some other things um, that I want us to talk about. Some things that we got like fire shut up in our bones. But we're gonna come back. But we thank you. All right, guys. Look for the Living Love Foundation. More information about it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, CC's 2 Cents Worth. And if you have something that you want to share or you want to be a part of the conversation, remember that you can join us live. But you can also, if you wanted to be a part of the discussion or you had something that was burning. Why is this not showing? There it is. All right. So if you had something that you wanted to share with us and you had a topic that was burning that you want us to look at, go ahead and email us at ccs2centsworth@gmail.com. All right. Until we meet again, y'all be kind to one another, love on one another, and be safe out here in these streets. Thank you, Reverend Tweel. I love you. I appreciate you. My glasses twin. We rocked that today. I'll
Yeah.
talk with you soon.
All right.
Bye.